Welcome to the Machlokes podcast. This is class number 20 in the discourse Kol Machlokes 5672. And this is the sixth discourse in the great book B'Shosh Ekdimu 5672. We are now in the sixth class in chapter 25. I think there'll be just one more concluding class and we'll be completed the sixth discourse and chapter 25. So we began to explain, based on all the aforementioned discussions in the entire chapter, the concept of why the regarding the Mishnah that says that every argument, dispute that is for a higher purpose is going to last. Disputes that are not for a higher purpose, they're driven by ego and so on and so forth, those will not last. And it differentiated between the arguments amongst the sages, which is a good argument, and the argument of Korach, who staged a revolt against Moshe, as a negative argument. And they call this one L'Shem Shemayim, for the sake of heaven, and the other one Shelo L'Shem Shemayim, not for the sake of heaven. We asked, why is it such a good thing that it's going to last? And shouldn't every argument not last? And what is the why over here does it mention Korach? The two sides, Shammai and Hillel and Shammai. And here it mentions only Korach and his assembly. That's what we were talking about. So yesterday we began to explain that there's two ways in which you can divide something. There can be a division where the target of the purpose of the division is to break things down so that you can achieve a deeper harmony and unity. Like we discussed all the way at the end of the class, how God took Adam and Eve that were really tied to each other back to back. He split them into two people. And initially he's causing division, because now that the two people, each one have their own heart and each one has their own mind and their own agendas, their own thoughts and their own interests. And now they have to live together. But as they live together and they figure it out and they recognize how to respect each other's differences, but recognize how all these different differences are meant to complement each other, and how together they can create a symphony, they can create music, they can create from their very differences, and how these two differences will make completion and wholesomeness. So that's the ultimate depth of unity that comes precisely from separation. Had they lived back to back, although they would not have been fighting, they wouldn't be in a dispute with each other, they would never achieve a deeper union. So we discussed the same thing with the Sfirot above. Had the 10 Sfirot all been hidden inside their potential, then although they wouldn't be fighting and clashing with each other, they still would not be fully appreciative and completely interwoven, intertwined, and interconnected, and wouldn't have experienced the ultimate wholesomeness that comes from the unification of all these various different attributes. For that, we have to take the Sfirot and enumerate them, specify them, express them individually, and then build bridges one from the other and build understanding until we can create a magnificent universe that God used through all the integrations and interconnectedness from these various different features. All comes together, and that's the beauty of the world of Tikkun, and that is according to God's desired plan. And in order for that to happen, we said, the pieces cannot be emerging to serve themselves. Each piece, each individual cannot step out onto stage so that it can be the one that's doing a performance. If it is doing so, it should be the solo and it should be the performer, then we are messing up. They have to be surrendered to what comes before them, to what initiated them to begin with, as pieces of a greater point, of a greater idea. Then they recognize how they are all different aspects or parts of one bigger thing. They respect it, and they recognize that they can't each come out with their full power. They have to restrain themselves. Each one has to step onto stage to play their role exactly at the time. Sometimes they have to let 5 other players, actors, step up before them, and only then they will come up on stage and do their act. And that is with that humility, so it's not like, give me the mic, I'm the one singing now, and everybody just be quiet. Can't do that. That would mean that's that force of tohu where they're just acting from their own impulse of expressing themselves. So that's the difference that's the difference of two types of Hischalkus and division, which is serving the purpose of a greater unity. And from the very get-go, that's the way it works. And when that happens, it comes out a little softer. It doesn't come out with its entire essence. Meaning the different each piece, each power filters itself before it comes out, because that's the only way it can come out in a manner that it can tolerate and work with other parts. If it comes out unfiltered, then they're yelling so loud, they're shouting so loud, they don't hear each other. There's no way, there's no communication. And that's the difference between tohu and tikkun. So we were learning over here, that's the significance of a machlokes, of a division that's l'shem shamayim, which means to serve the higher purpose. They're dividing not for self-expression, but to serve a bigger cause, which is calling for them to each one play their role, but for a higher intention. That's l'shem simply means for the sake of God, not for the sake of self, sake of heaven. Now he's going to give another nuance in the concept of l'shem shamayim, and why it means that there's a Kabbalistic meaning in the word l'shem shamayim. Simply it means for God's sake. The deeper meaning means for the sake of creating a mashpia and a makabel, a influencer and an influenced, which means that the entire system that God set up is a system of husband and wife, male and female, contributor and receiver. That's the way the whole system works, lights and vessels. Now that whole system is only systemized that way in the world of tikkun. In the world of tohu, where there's no order, because every power sees itself as the center of existence, as the main, as it's all about it, then first of all, there's no synchronization between the lights and the vessels. As we know, in the world of tohu, the lights were too intense for the vessels shattered. Number one. Secondly, there's no order that we can say that one sphere or one attribute comes out before the other one and they step out one after another. Now, in the system of sphirot, where we have the way God did emanate those sphirot, after the 10 hidden sphirot were hidden in their potential, we said the reason why it's coming through at tzimtzum, which is a contraction, is to make a miyot to diminish the light, so that they will present themselves one after another. So when the Sfirot present themselves, for instance, Chachma first, and then Chachma steps aside and Bina comes forth, and then Bina steps aside and Das comes forth, and then Das makes room for the emotions, and so on and so forth. Already you have the concept of Mashpia and Makabel, because Chachma is male, it's the first presenter, it's the energy, and Bina is the receiving force. And in general, the Mochen, the intelligence, they're first, they're the mashpia, they're called oir, they're called light. And the midos, the emotions, they're the makabel, they're the kalim, they're the recipients. They receive. The intellect informs the emotions. So the whole evolution works of mashpia and makabel, influencer and recipient. But that's only possible if they are coming out in an orderly fashion. If all the powers emerge full blast in 1 second, then one is not receiving from the next. So there's no mashpia makabel. And he says the concept of the meaning of l'shem shamayim is shame. The word shame, Kabbalistically, represents malchut. Malchus is called name. Malchus is the last and final of the 10 sefirot, and it is the ultimate vessel. It's the bowl. It's the recipient. It receives from all the sefirot. It all comes from. Malchus is a lot of times associated with speech, and speech is words, and words have no other content other than what is placed in the words. Words are just plain vessels. Like when we were learning earlier on the words Baruch, when you take away one letter from the others, Baruch, the letters are just vessels, containers. Malchus is a world of containers. And therefore Malchus is called Mekabel, the recipient. Shamayim is, now by the way, that Malchus is called shame, just a few more ideas. A king rules with his name. The name of the king spreads out over the country. So that's what's related to Malchus. Malchus is kingship. And also, we say it in Kriya Shema, we say, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchusai La'olam Vad. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom. I'm just giving another point where you have the Shem and the Malchus associated together. There's another verse that says, Melech Shemai nikra aleim. The king, what's the word? I think that's Azay Melech Shemoy Nikra. Then his Melech, his name was called. So Malchus is, again, everywhere from all angles, Malchus' name. What's Shamayim? Shamayim comes from the word, means heaven. But Shamayim comes from the word Eish and Mayim. Shamayim, and Rashi says that Shamayim, the firmament, the heavens, are made up of fire and water. Fire and water represent Chesed and Gevura. Water is Chesed, kindness, and fire is Gevura. The blend of the two of them together is representing and indicative of the Ze'er Anpin, the 6 emotions, which in general are called male compared to Malchus, that's female. So Shem Shamayim is a couple. When we say Shem Shamayim, we mean a unity between male and female, between the divine masculine emotions and the divine attribute of speech, of kingship. Shem Shamayim is their union. Machlokes l'Shem Shamayim means a division that respects the concept of influencer and influenced, of mashpia, of transmitter and makabel and recipient, which we said earlier is only possible when there is self-restraint, where there is, in the world of Tohu, we know there's no marriage. Actually, divorce comes from Tohu. The Rebbe's father talks a lot about that get, explains it in the word get, which is divorce, how it comes from the world of Tohu, where in the world of Tohu, when it, in the 7 kings that are mentioned in Bereshis, which speak about those 7 ancient kings of the world of Edom, which Arizal says that's where it's hinted to, the powerful emanations of the energies of Tohu that collapsed. It doesn't mention by any of them that they were married. It mentions these were the kings, and they ruled and they died. They ruled and they died, which in Kabbalah and Hasidism is explained that the shattered vessels of Tohu, they shattered. Till the 8th king. Finally, when it mentions the 8th king, after the 7 that died, the 8th one, his name is Hadar, and by him it says he had a wife, and her name was Mahatabel. Why does it mention a wife only by her? Because the 8th king is the source. In Kabbalah mysticism, it says that the 8th king is the beginning, it's the source of the world of Tikkun. After we finished the emanations of Tohu that shattered, God is now preparing the next world, the next system, and the future system is going to be one of harmony and peace and tikkun. And over there is marriage. That's why the sages derive from, where do we know it's a mitzvah? That it's a mitzvah to get married. So the sages, it says in the Torah that you have to have children, but the idea of marriage, the sages say from the pasuk, Lo l'tohu bra'ah, Hashem did not create the world for chaos, Elo l'sheves yitzar, only to settle it. Settling means settling lights and vessels, and also settling means to settle down with a family. It's called sometimes getting married, it's called settling down. All right, a person is wild in his youth, you do everything you want, is really basically living an extremist life, there's no restraint. And then when you get married, you have to deal with a partner. And then that means that you have to curb your ego and yourself. And you have to restrain, and that's all the idea of marriage. So you see, in Tohu, there's no marriage. And that's why the 8th king, that's the source of Tikkun, that's where wedding and marriage takes place. So therefore, the concept of L'Shem Shamayim, where Malchut, which is Shem, which is the name, Shamayim, which is heaven, are married together, Shem Shamayim, that is only possible if the Machlokes, if the division, it's the division that we spoke earlier, when God divides Adam and Eve into 2, in a sense he's creating division, because now they're 2 separate entities, but it's for the sake of the 2 of them getting married. It's the sake of Adam, which is really Ze'er Anpin, which in the spiritual source, Adam is the representation. Adam is the representation of the 6 emotions of God, the male emotions. And Chava, Eve, she's the power of Malchut, and their marriage represents this yichud of Ze'er Anpin and Malchus, Shem Shamayim. So that machlokes, a machlokes that leads l'Shem Shamayim, is going to be l'skayim. It's going to continue, like we see a marriage. If there's anything that actually is once again is l'skayim, lasts forever in a human being, is only marriage, because marriage produces children, and then a person continues their existence for all of eternity. If one stays single and doesn't father children, which of course, technically one can do that without marriage, but that's not the way God intended. So the institution of marriage is to help also facilitate children, where you see that you're doing a machlokes, you're separating them, and l'shem shamayim, so there can be a unity of mashpia and makabel, of influencer and influenced. The man becomes the influencer, or the woman is the influenced, the recipient. Together they build together. They have children, and that goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. Li'yiskayim, it lasts. So let's see it inside. V'gam pirush, and also the explanation l'shem shamayim. What does it mean l'shem shamayim? The shem u'b'chinas malchus. Shem is the concept of malchus. V'shamayim b'chinas zah. Shamayim is the idea of zah, stands for ze'er anpin, the 6 emotions. Kenoida, as it is known. Doesn't give too much explanation over here, but he's written. In order that this whole concept of there should be an influencer and an influenced, a recipient. That the ze'er anpin, the 6 emotions, are influencers. Malchus and malchus b'chinas makabel is a recipient. Zehu dafka, this is only ayadei eschalkus asfiris. Only when the sfirot divide. Because if the sfirot are all one big mush, then they're all directly receiving from Atzmus, from the essence. There's no hierarchy, there's no system. And definitely so there's no marriage when the sfirot are all in their source. And even if they come out, but they come out simultaneously, not one before the other, meaning not in a system of tikkun, not in a system of miyot, not in a system of diminishment, but they come out to express themselves, then also there's no marriage, because then they all feel equal. Okay, dafkai de eschalkus asfiras b'madreges prat is only when they get divided. So you need division in order to bring, and this particular division, the division of tikkun, which controls the energies, which filters the energies, which keep the energies in check. Then you can create a cohesive team, whether it's a husband and wife, whether it's a team of workers working on a project together, whether it's a bunch of actors performing a play, whether it's musicians producing music, whatever it is, it takes everybody doing their part to unify and to bring it all together. That's one level of ischalkus, and that's l'shem shamayim. Now we have a deeper meaning. First of all, l'shem shamayim means they're not serving themselves; they're serving a higher purpose. They're intending the unity, not self-expression. The second element over here is that l'shem shamayim itself means that there should be an order amongst the sfirot, and then you have a influencer and a recipient, which is the concept of marriage, of zah and malchus. Schalkos abeis, but then there's another way of dividing, which is not a good division, and it's opposite God's intention. Even though God did run one system that way, but he did that in order to create a mess. This system that he's going to speak about now, this division, is a very negative division. It causes chaos, it causes shattering, it causes war and everything dark. God did it because God wants us to have something to fix. And that's the reason he did it. But it itself is a negative. And therefore it's against his will. Although he wills it. But he wills it because of a higher purpose. This itself that he emanates to is for a higher purpose. But he lets the sphirot come out in a rampage. Schalkus abeis on the second division, which is Schalkus, is a type of division usibas apirut, which is the intention. It's a cause for separation, and each one going their own way and crying out my way or the highway, and not willing to sit down and discuss. And this is similar. Kamoi his Schalkus the spheres atohu. It's like the division of the attributes in the world of tohu. They came out full force. The spheros came out in a blast, or with a powerful emergence of a lot of light, meaning without filtering that light. And when they came out very self-conscious, very much about themselves. Once something is a metzius, once something is, that's why by those kings of Edom it says vayimloch, they reigned, which means each one felt that they are the king. Like a king feels that I'm the boss and there can't be two kings, right? So the king is full power. But the problem is when you have 10 kings, no good, they'll fight. This is what causes division, causes the branches to go off each branch in a different direction. Which will not lead to integration, because they don't even talk to each other. No one allows the other to talk. They're all shouting over each other. And it's lacking is kalalus. It's lacking integration. The Adraban, on the contrary, here they were better off when they were in their source, because at least, even though they weren't integrated, but they also were. But however, they were tolerating each other because they were all unpronounced and unexpressed, and they were all in their source. But when they come out without a cap, when they come out in a blaze, then you not only don't you have iskalalus, you don't even have tolerance. They can't sit with each other. They do not tolerate each other. Machlokes, and this is an argument. It's not for a higher purpose. And he's going to explain l'shem shamayim now in the same two ways we explained it earlier. Number one, it's not according to the higher intention. I mean, obviously in the world of Tohu it was, but it was in order, it's not the ultimate intention. So of course, it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't according to God's intention. But in general, in our lives, God never wants us to have these Tohu. We're supposed to avoid this. This is the way our animal soul generally likes to operate, because our animal soul is a broken piece from the world of Tohu. So that our animalistic self is usually operates in this manner unless we harness it and rein it in with our higher consciousness. So this is not for the sake of heaven, meaning this is not the intention. And this is like I spoke yesterday in a community, in a congregation, and whatever it is, where the leader of the congregation, the leader of the community, is not the one directing and calling forth the division. And then it's very controlled and very directed and it's done in a clever, guarded manner. But when there is no leadership, and then there are some people that are just more aggressive, that decide each one that they're going to run the ship the way they want, and they're not really the leader supposed to be, then you're going to have chaos, and it's going to end up in war, it's going to end up in division, it's going to end up in a broken community and whatever. And this is what leads to a pirud. And in general, it causes that there's no marriage, as we said earlier. So it separates bein shem l'shamayim, between the shem and shamayim, between malchut, which is the recipient, and shamayim, which is the influencer. And this is the meaning of machlokes shel shem shamayim sofa l'skayim. This is now he's going back and he says this is the meaning. That when you have a division that's for l'shem shamayim, it's going to last. What does that mean? It's going to be in a state of kiyum. It's going to last. Means it's going to lead to a lasting effect. When you divide things, as we spoke earlier, when you get married in a healthy way, when you're getting married for a higher purpose, which is, by the way, the symbol of the chuppah. The chuppah is a transcendental element which gives the chassan and kala an understanding that they have to rise beyond their own personal agendas and get married for the sake of God's will, to fulfill God's purpose, and how the two of them together will act as a unit by being different, yet having different roles, yet complementing each other so they can unify their souls to be together. So then it's going to last. And the same is when it comes to needing to know the ultimate truth of Torah, the deeper understanding of Torah. The rabbis who explore the mitzvah, they get into arguments, but the purpose of their argument is not so that each one feels they want to be the smart one. They want to be the one who knows everything. But rather, when they get married, when the rabbis get into this argument, the purpose of their argument is to seek the truth. And this one says it's its opinion, but they're able to quiet down and hear the other opinion. They might argue. They might even argue loud, but there is an overall sense that they're not fighting for their egos. They're fighting for truth. And then, as a result of the various different viewpoints and clashing, in the end, they find integration. They're able to integrate their two opinions to create one solid understanding of the mitzvah. And even if there will be in the end two approaches, but there's a certain respect and an understanding that it's through the various different approaches that we create the ultimate godly intention that God had in the mitzvah in this project. And that's the meaning. Seifel is Kayim. It's going to remain, because the various the differences themselves are going to. It's not going to remain a fight. It's going to remain a complementary, unified truth that encompasses and tolerates within itself various different modes, different aspects, all coming together for one greater beautiful objective. And that's the meaning lihiskayim. V'gam. So number one, the reason it's miskayim is because it's according to God's intention. It fits God's intention. It fits the purpose. Since it fits the purpose, ultimately God's purpose in existence is going to be fulfilled. So since this fit is consistent with the purpose, it's going to last. Anything that goes against the purpose of creation doesn't last. V'gam, but now he's going to give even a deeper reason, deeper understanding of what means sofa lehiskayim. Amazing. What happens once, since they're arguing and dividing with the intention of later harmonizing and bringing the various different factions together, what happens? What did we say? That the very separation and differentiation ultimately leads to them to become very deeply connected. And once they become deeply connected, they draw down even a higher light. Remember we said in the last class that after the teacher gives the 10, let's say we just gave the example of a teacher that teaches an entire semester, let's say 10 classes or 10 weeks. And in each class or each week, they deliver one piece, one part of the lesson. So we said that the student, after they get the 10 lessons, they still don't have, even though they get the whole picture, they don't get it with the same clarity like the teacher. But when the student further delves deep into all the particles, and then into and runs a thread between the particles, between the lessons, between the parts, and finds how they're all interconnected and interwoven one with each other, then as a result of them all coming together, then a higher light shines in them. A much higher light, the same light that was shining in the teacher, that same brilliance. In our case, when all the sefirot are merged together, after they become enumerated and differentiated, and then they are all together, then the essence of the Or Ein Sof that was shining before the 10 hidden sefirot were divided, the essence of the Or Ein Sof that was shining in them is now recaptured and present. And if there's anything that is lehiskayim, that is permanent, it's the essence of the Or Ein Sof. So he's now giving deeper. It's not just because it fills God's purpose and God gives his blessing. But deeper than that, God's blessing means that God will dwell in it. And we say God, we mean not his external light, the inner light of the Or Ein Sof. Well, that's permanent. And that's why, because every machlokes which is leading to harmony, in harmony, the Or Ein Sof will dwell. Because the Or Ein Sof only dwells in a wholesome place. Like we find this also. When did the Torah come? We see this is right now, Sfirat HaOmer. After we count 49 days, which are our 7 emotions, we pay attention each week to a different one of our 7 emotions. And we try to bring a certain integration and harmony amongst all of our details of our the spectrum of our emotions. And we bring it all together. Then we come to the 50th, and in the 50th is revealed the deeper level of the 50th, the Ein Sof suddenly dwells in the person. Or, as we spoke in a marriage, in order to create children, you need to have God himself. Only God can create eternity. And where does God dwell? Where there is a couple and a man and a woman, and they bring harmony And that's where Hashem gives his blessing. So you're seeing again and again and again that integration brings down the presence of the Or Ein Sof, and that is what gives Kiyum. That's what gives the ultimate substance and endurance and lasting endurance for all of eternity. V'gam, that's what he says. Sha'idei Yiskalalus, through the integration. Meir Gilui Or Elyon Yoser, shines a much higher light. This is the ultimate certification through the revelation of Atzmus Or Ein Sof Baruch Hu, of the essence of the Or Ein Sof. But when the intention is not for the sake of heaven, Ein Sof Eliskayim will not last. Number one, since this is opposite, God doesn't like it, God doesn't want it. And therefore, everything that God disapproves can maybe exist temporarily, but won't last. And another thing. So one it negates the purpose. The other one is it itself is unlastable. Why is it itself unlastable? When things are just pieces, since they're when the different parts, each one is obsessed with themselves. After everything is said and done, you're only a piece. And meaning you're only a piece means you need everybody else. You just don't want to recognize it. You can't last on your own. Like if you're an extremist and you only want one way, since in truth you're really part of a bigger picture, so in the end, when you need, it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. The sustainability is that when we live in a community, integrated one with each other. And like we find in the world of Tohu, each sphere went off onto its own, and eventually they collapsed and broke, and they died. In the end, it causes a bittul. Like in the world of Tohu, which doesn't last. Okay, we're going to stop over here. B'ezras Hashem, tomorrow we're going to conclude the chapter in the last class 21. B'ezras Hashem. Let Mashiach be here now.